And the Labour MP, David Lammy, joins us now. He suggested over the weekend that he might stand for the Labour leadership himself. Can you firm that up for us?
I'm not going to be standing for the Labour leadership.
You're not? Why not?
Because I think we need a leader that can win back the Midlands, understand Scotland as well as the South. Actually, we need to do better in London. My strengths are in London and the South, and therefore I want to be the Labour candidate for mayor. I think we've got a good field of people who'll be putting their pitch over the coming weeks. I don't want to be part of that. I want to help the Labour Party win in the suburbs in London and actually also contribute to the debate about how we win back the south of England.
So you're going to focus on London, standing for London mayor, or certainly candidate for London mayor. How bad do you think the defeat was on election night for Labour?
Devastating. When I look beyond Enfield North, we've got to get to Cambridge and Norris South before we've got any representation in the east of England. The South is totally blue. We did not win votes in places like Essex, places like Kent, in the Shires. So it is a devastating result, I'm afraid, a result that demonstrates that Labour is back in its comfort zone, back in metropolitan Britain, and frankly perceived to be a metropolitan Liberal Party. I was someone who was critical in the past, was told to be quiet, so, of course, I, along with others, want to be clear now that we need to, of course, keep our core vote, but we must also appeal beyond the Labour tribe, or you just don't form the government. That was the verdict of the British people.
So do you agree that under the Labour Party, under Ed Miliband's leadership, there was too narrow an agenda, it was too anti-business, is what some of your colleagues have said, and they were guilty, including yourself, of ignoring large swathes of the population?
We have to broaden our appeal. The offer we made at the general election was too narrow, in my view. And frankly...
Did you say enough about that at the time?
I wrote a whole book about it. I mean, you can't...
All right, I'll let you off then.
250 pages. I said so 18 months ago. I said so a year ago. The leader called me into his office. You know, we must have that debate. And there are journalists here that know I've been someone who's been saying it's too narrow.
Right.
Quite good.
All right, well, Tom Newton-Dunn thinks that must be right, then.
It's not the sort vote.
What about this period of letting off steam, bloodletting?
I don't say that with any joy, I've got to say.
But, I mean, is this now time? Because, in a way, after Tony Blair, there was Gordon Brown. Then, after Gordon Brown, there was the crash and the recession, and Labour had to choose another leader relatively quickly. I know they did take a bit of time, but relatively quickly. Do you think now they've got to have some period of time for letting off steam, for bloodletting, to get it all out there before they pick the new leader?
The contest back in 2010 was basically the Miliband show. It was a fight about two brothers. It was not really a big debate about the direction of the party, and it didn't sufficiently connect into the country. I think we've got to go long. I actually think the best template was Michael Howard in 2005. He stayed on as leader. He took all the flack for losing. They had a really long contest that stretched from party conference up to December. It was a great timetable, and actually David Cameron emerged as a completely fresh face, and you've got to give him credit. He just won a general election.
Kevin, do you agree with that? I mean, David Lammy's just ruled himself out now on the programme, implying that it should be someone from 2010, the new generation, missing out the Yvette Coopers and Andy Burnhams, if you like, of this world because they're connected to the Blair Brown years. Do you agree with what David Lammy's assessment?
Yeah, I do, and I think that's the big division in the election. It's not left-right, it's not big ideological issues. It's whether you take somebody who was there at the time when the economy went down in 2008, was in the Blair and the Brown era, or whether you kind of start again, knowing the general election's unlikely to be before 2020. So I think it makes a lot more sense to look to the future. That might be hard on Yvette Cooper and Andy Burnham, but nevertheless, I think it's just a reality. You're tainted from an era now which is toxic with the electorate. However unfair it is that the allegation that the crash was created by spending rather than bankers and a collapse in the global economy, you can argue the point, you can argue the point, you can argue the point again, but nevertheless, you're just carrying so much baggage.
Kevin wrote an interesting column in the Daily Mirror this morning. In fact, he writes an interesting column.
I was going to say,
every
you made
Monday
that sound like it's a rare occurrence.
which I read every Monday morning.
Sounded a bit surprised.
I know, yeah. I'll take all praise, doesn't matter.
But what he won't get much of it. But what he did say is it's not really the message that was the problem. The message should have been bolder. We should have preached the left message far louder. The real problem was the medium. The real problem was Ed Miliband. What we need is someone who can sell Ed Milibandism, but with a bit more sort of character, which is.
But that isn't your
that
isn't your critique, is it? It is actually more about what the party is about and appealing to a much broader section of the community. Because as you say, it is quite devastating, isn't it? Scotland, Labour's been pretty well wiped out. You didn't actually take any seats, or very few, off the Conservatives in England. So in a way, you're sort of retrenched in that sense. And UKIP are taking votes off Labour in the north. So right across the UK is a problem for Labour, isn't it?
A couple of things. First, I don't think the 35% strategy was effective. I don't think it's just about winning Lib Dems and deepening your Labour core vote. We took absolutely no Tory floaters at all. And I think that was wrong. And two, of course we had challenges with the leader. You could see that on his poll ratings. I remember a black woman in South London saying to me, I'll take the Labour Party seriously again when you take me seriously again and get a leader that can communicate. So this time round, we have to listen to the country and not just to ourselves, and we have to think very hard about which candidate has the appeal beyond the Labour tribe. It's not just a beauty contest, it's absolutely about the policy and the offer as well. But let's face it, the salesman or woman goes hand in hand with the offer you're making to the British public.
Who would you be backing, do you think?
I am not going to say who I'm backing now because I haven't seen their pitch. I want to see their pitch. I want to see them connect beyond Labour over the coming weeks and months. Obviously, I'm thinking very hard about what that pitch is here in London. And I might say in London, there's this sort of self-congrat. We did well in London. We didn't win in Barnet. We didn't win in Battersea. We didn't win in Enfield Southgate. We didn't win in Harrow, in the suburban areas of London. Again, the 35% strategy failed.
Now, I mean, there are reports that David Miliband, Ed's brother, is going to make some sort of statement today. He was your choice to be Labour leader back in 2010. Would you welcome him back in some role in Labour politics here?
David is a good friend of mine. I was very sad when he lost. And the PLP lost some very capable people, and he was one of them. My own view, I'll see what he says today, is it would be very hard to go back to a Miliband battle. So I suspect it's not about coming back, but he continues to be, as you've seen, another array of senior figures, someone who can make an important contribution to the nature of the debate that we must have.
Tom Newton, who would the Tories like to be running Labour?
I'll tell you who they really didn't want at all. That was Dan Jarvis.
I know, and he's ruled himself out.
That was fist pumping in number 10 last night when Dan Jarvis ruled himself out. I think they'd like an Andy Burnham or an Yvette Cooper. Probably Andy Burnham. Someone, you know, with the support of the unions, they could typecast as a big man of the left who basically won't do anything, as David just says, to change the offer.
What about you, Kevin Maguire? Who would you like to see as Labour leader?
I think it should be somebody from the 2010 generation. Whoever that is, you've got to wait and see.
You've got to see how they do in the debates.
Exactly. They've got to
how they communicate.
Got to stand up to scrutiny. And I wrote the column. Labour's problem wasn't the policies, but it was Ed Miliband. I thought back in 2010, David Miliband would have been a much better leader. But it was also Labour just didn't get that optimistic message. You could get the fear of the Tories. But where was the vision? Where was the hope? And of course, you can link Middle England to working class England, however you want to describe it, in the sense that people in Middle England, yes, they want you to be able to trust. They want to trust you with their money, but they also rely on public services. They want somebody on their side who's going to make life better for them and their children.
Do you think it's going to be different? I mean, Tom Newton Dunn made the point about having an Andy Burnham type character because he would probably come with the support of the unions, but it is going to be different this time because Ed Miliband changed the rules for the Labour leadership. So the unions aren't going to have the same sort of power in terms of patronage that they had in 2010.
One member, one vote. You've got to fight for every single vote. No big block for MPs. No big patronage from unions. You've got to be out there making the argument. This is a completely new horizon for the Labour Party. It will be very interesting. And here in London, we have a primary where members of the public in London can pay £3, get involved and choose their candidate.
That will deprive the Tories of a powerful line that they have engaged time and time again, won't they? To say Ed Miliband was propped up by the unions. He's the paymaster for Ed Miliband. That will go.
Not quite, because there's still the funding of the party. Because if you are elected leader, There's someone in the shadow cabinet I was talking to last night who's contemplating running as well, who was saying, do you know, if I had my way, I'd let Unite go. They could go and support the SNP, the anti-austerity SNP. We don't need Unite. We've got to fund ourselves properly right from the beginning all over again. So if you have maybe a Liz Kendall or a Tristram Hunt or something like that, they would do that. Andy Burnham would come with all the union money and all the union funding still.
Look, the new leader could put all the trade unions in the hold of a boat and send it to Australia, and they'd still accuse him of being in the pocket of trade unions. I've long argued it would be better, both for trade unions and the Labour Party, if they were institutionally separate. Now, there'd be a common interest. They may still give donations. They're professional negotiators. They might get better policies for it.
It would also put them in a better position when dealing with non-Labour governments.
Absolutely, Andrew.
Can just briefly before you go, how do you deal with Scotland? What do you do now?
Well, we're reduced to one MP. Look, in the end, the parties that won were the parties that made a national offer. The SNP made a national offer to Scotland, and they went for that. And actually, the Conservatives in England also made a national offer by saying, do you want the SNP running England? And actually, I think on the economy, they were speaking to the whole country. So part of the secret for the Labour Party in Scotland must be to get back to that national sense of coherence that the Scottish people want, and away from what I know, and I don't claim to know everything, that kind of tribalism and smallness that had engulfed the Labour Party for much of that time. The job for Jim Murphy is massive. I might say, obviously it's right that he stayed on, because he's not, in a sense, he was never going to solve this in just the 6 months in coming into the job. But it's a huge job, and that's part of the reason why I'm certainly not running for the leader. The next leader of the Labour Party needs to understand that acutely and have a good relationship with Jim Murphy to take that forward.
David Lammy, thank you.
The funniest line in relation to Scotland was when Nigel Farage said that we had to stop throwing money over Hadrian's Wall. Because if you throw money over Hadrian's Wall, it's still in England.
In England? No, you have to throw it. You have to throw it a long way.
You have to throw it a long way before it reaches Scotland.
Strong arm from all that drinking.
Speaking of